Hi, I'd like to welcome my friend David Kennedy Cutler, artist, who currently has a show at Derek Eller Gallery in New York until April 12, 2025. And I actually wanted to start off our conversation asking you some questions about how you manage energy levels, like doing in the run up to a solo show, and how you manage the drop off after it's over, and how do you take care of yourself, and what you've noticed about yourself over the years in the working process.
Yeah, I think I have a tendency to maybe go about it in a slightly unhealthy way, but I really like working right up until my exhibition extremely hard on my show. I have a tendency to make far too much work for an exhibition, but I do believe that the sort of inner energy or inner inertia within you kind of carries through the work, and sometimes bits of magic or miracles happen at the last possible minute. So oftentimes I'll work right up into the show. And I just suddenly get an idea, make a piece, and then it might be like a week before the show, and I'm rushing to finish this and rushing to finish that. I'm packing the show like the night before the shippers come, and it could be superstitious, but I feel like that you can really, that kind of behavior or methodology is really palpable in the work where you kind of feel the spirit in which it was made. And then I end up sort of probably by neglecting the rest of my life, creating a bunch of crises that transpire as soon as the show opens, with moving studios or leaving things in disasters or not having worked paying jobs or not having dealt with various other things or seen family and stuff. So then I spend most of the show scrambling to correct all that. And then finally, maybe when the show is over or nearing its end, I think I finally get a chance to try to digest what I did, or maybe go on vacation or get a massage or something.
Yeah, you don't do you fall into a funk at any point?
I can. Sort of depends on how long the show is. Like, I've done these performance exhibitions.
Yes.
There was this one I did at Halsey McKay in 2018 where I was in costume performing for 10 weeks. And I think about week five, I hit a funk. And I thought, I'm the boss here. Does anyone really care about this? I could fire myself and then I could just like go home to my house and have like a nap and like a tea and the warm blanket and stop doing this horrible stuff. But I usually come out of that and go back to my insane making schedule because it fills me with so much joy. And a lot of coffee helps.
Yeah, so essentially keep your schedule going so there isn't ever a cliff that you totally fall off. You still keep working on other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that making art makes me physically happy as well as mentally. So the more I make, the better I feel. Except for the volume of things I make, that makes me depressed because then I have to deal with them physically.
Yeah. Oh, hey, so I was at your opening and you were seeming very graceful, and I know that openings make me bananas. And I was just wondering how you manage, dealing with a lot of different people you're happy to see, family. Sometimes people come up and say something unsolicited and irritating, and just wondering how you deal with all that.
I really enjoy like showing people, and that makes me really happy that everyone can see it. And I think that that generally outweighs any anxious feelings that I'm having during the opening. And obviously, people do come up, and sometimes particularly crazy people, and want to talk to you about their work at your opening, or you can feel overwhelmed. But overall, I feel pretty happy. But this most recent opening, I seem to be doing great, but I was a little worried about my stepmom who had just gotten out of surgery and was struggling to find a chair in the gallery. She really wanted some wine because her pain medicine had worn off, and she was having trouble getting an Uber. And so I felt like a little bit, but I don't know if anyone really noticed that. But in general, I just think it's like you've achieved this incredible thing, and I love people, and it's like really nice to see them all, especially after you lock yourself away for months making a show and not really seeing anyone. It's just really nice to sort of tentacle out and love and touch everyone, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in the past, I've gone transitioning from being really introverted to extroverted is tough for me personally, but everybody has their way.
It's
So,
true. We're all individuals.
how you feel about money, like money that comes or doesn't come from art making?
Yeah, I mean, money is the big struggle. It's frustrating. I think I'm inherently kind of socialist minded, but money and quality of life are linked, and I think we all want a good life. and we exist in capitalism, so we're confined by the way it is. And also, if anyone's listening, they probably shouldn't listen to me about money ever. I'm really bad at it.
Do you ever like sell something and then have to have a internal dialogue about whether or not that doesn't make the work more valuable, but you still feel kind of good that you get some income that helps you make other artwork or survive, but that doesn't make the art that piece better than the
Yeah, I
other.
mean, there's validation in being wanted. It's like, like anything in life, like, oh, they wanted me. But the money helps with the anxiety and all that stuff. But I do think that I also make a lot of things that can be challenging and a little bit agitating, even more than challenging, I would say. And I really like when I was actually just talking about this because there's a couch painting in my show that's up right now. It's a painting of a
Of a
couch.
couch, not
But I really love the idea of someone buying it and putting it over their couch.
yes.
Partially though, not just as like a arch or wry kind of commentary on couch paintings, but also I just really like the idea that people think about sitting on a couch while they're sitting on a couch. And a lot of the work that I make is there's a lot of domesticity and sort of like quotidian subject matter. And I think that like if people put those things in the places where their like originating iconography comes from, I think that it inherently makes like weird dialogues about like uncanny feelings about things in our lives. And so I think about ownership and reception in my work a lot. And so I think that buying things to put somewhere is part of like my thought process, even about making certain things.
You mean where the work is it going to end up possibly as opposed to just what's happening in your studio?
Yeah, or just like the way that we live with ideas expressed through artworks, but like ultimately they're just like representations of objects. I mean, the reality is that art's expensive, and the people who buy it are usually more well off than the artists that they're buying from. And, sometimes they're going into very kept homes, and I feel like my artworks are very unkept or unkempt or whatever. So it's like you're sort of like infecting someone's house with yourself.
Is there anything about working with galleries that you were surprised to learn from, the last 20 years?
I mean, I think that when you're young, everything's an abstraction. And I think that you begin to realize that these are really personal relationships and they're important relationships. And that just like everything else in life, there might be people in the world, like other galleries, who admire what you do and respect what you do, but it doesn't mean they'll show what you do. And I think that those like special connections you make with galleries are not very easily repeatable with other people. So I think that that's something I guess I didn't really understand, that like those things about timing and spontaneity and connections and personal relationships are like at the core of exhibiting your work.
You've worked with certain galleries for a long time and they've grown also along with your practice. And I think even
Because
just
of my practice, clearly.
what? Oh, because
Because of my
yeah. I was thinking about when I was younger, working with smaller galleries that are really just, month to month paying bills and you're all in a panic and some people you have to be on guard against, but some you're all in it together. It's good to not react to emails that you read wrong. Assume everybody is just doing their best. Oh, I was going to ask you again a question about if you have any experience working with formal contracts.
I think that I'm probably the least formal artist ever. Everything is sort of just verbal and pretty loose. And I don't even remember if I've ever even really asked for consignment myself. Like maybe the galleries that work with me or for me ask for consignments, but like pretty much everything I deal with is handshake agreements. I don't really remember signing much ever. I've never had like a major public commission, or I imagine you would probably have to have that kind of thing going on. But like overall, I just think that most things are done by my radar and being, if someone is really sketchy, I just sort of don't want to deal with them.
I think you were telling me a story without naming anyone, but how you honed your radar through some frustrating experiences.
Yeah, I mean, the people take advantage, and there's been economic downturns where people try to take advantage of artists, and they show up and they offer them like bargain rates with like catalogs and flights to exhibitions and, all these things, and you can get burned. And the interesting thing is when I started working with people with integrity, and this is shout out to Derek Eller and Ryan Wallace of Halsey McKay, a lot of those people slithered off, they never show up again because those people don't usually like to work with people who have integrity because they're sketchy in their bones.
Oh, would you have any tips about how to suss that out for someone who's trying to figure it out?
I think being too cynical is a bad thing. And I also think too much idealism in relation to what you're going to get out of your early exhibiting career can be pretty dangerous because a lot of people think like, oh, this is going to be it, this is the gateway to everything. And most things will be horribly unpredictable. A lot of people maybe would say no to really kind of DIY early cool gallery kind of things when they're young. And I would say don't do that. Like show with your friends, show in cheap DIY venues because if you trust the people, like usually good things will really happen. And I mean, probably you and I both have experience with this. Like I think even about Gildan Grayskull or my friends who started Klaus von Nichtsagen Gallery. These are like young, scrappy galleries started by artists. And if you were a young artist and you were too snobby to show with them, it was like your mistake, because they ended up doing really cool and interesting things and creating major opportunities for people. Like oftentimes when I teach, I tell students like I'm like a teacher and all your professors are, teachers, but like we're not going to really help you. The people sitting around you will be the people that end up helping you.
Yeah, I think making networks amongst your peers is really powerful for your internal journey and possibly for your outer world journey. And they'll stay with you for a long time.
1000%.
Yeah, and you trust them. And I sometimes want to think if someone I don't know, maybe I can ask around the artist network, try to find out if this person is trustworthy. Because
Yeah.
usually artists seem to like know each other or be more open to sharing if they've had a bad experience with other
Yeah.
artists.
I mean, I can't even imagine what people are dealing with like AI now. Like sometimes I get like I mean, I even get them actually like, solicitations where I'm like, who wrote this? Is this a human being even? Like, and that's probably only gonna get worse.
Oh yeah, making a note to make a small video about those weird phishing emails where they want to buy something, but you have to wire them something first. Hey, how do you feel about studio visits? If you're in school situation, like you went to an undergraduate art school and you have a lot of visits when you're in a formal environment like that, but then when you're on your own, like you got to make them happen. I'm just curious about how you seek them out and how you see that in importance in your working life and
Yeah, I mean, I think that like people shouldn't be shy about asking for them, but and then when people flake, their like entire world crumbles, and sometimes people just get busy. But then also sometimes people who flake on you are just, forgive my language, but who cancel like 10 minutes before, and then I'm like, maybe
oof.
you weren't supposed to ever visit, like invitation rescinded
Yeah,
forever or
red
whatever.
flag. It's not gonna
Um,
nothing good will come.
yeah, but also some of my best studio visits have been from other people telling those people that they should come to my studio. My studio is so hectic that sometimes a studio visit isn't even productive. And I think that overall, I've been making work for long enough and it might be crazy enough that I think people know what they're going to get. I think sometimes people just trust that I'm going to deliver something good if they invite me into a show or an opportunity. Sometimes even just Photoshop renderings actually suffice for the studio visit.
Oh yeah, like over email or on the computer, like they come to your space, but they still see the work on the computer.
Or sometimes I'll just be like, I have this crazy idea. This is what it would look like, like bodies flying through walls and, whatever, and be like, looks cool."
Usually someone you've got a working relationship with, so they kind of know what
Sure, yeah.
the idea is compared to the realization.
But I do think that, and I maybe said this before, but sometimes my favorite commentary from studio visits comes from people who accidentally walk into my studio and then they just give you like a cold read without any of the formalism of it. So like, someone who's like dropping off your work might say a comment, or one of your studio mates, friends might walk through and make some comment, or sometimes those things are like more illuminating to what you're really up to than, pouring someone a coffee and sitting down and crossing your legs and like actually having like a deep discussion about it.
How often do you have just somebody else's presence in your studio?
I would say that maybe that's a little more unique for me because my side job and my studio are a little like interwoven. because I have an art installation company that works for private collectors in their homes. So when we're done with the jobs, we dump all the crap and tools into my studio. So I have like a perpetual like crew of artists that are like popping by my studio to pick things up, drop things off. So it's like kind of like having a warehouse with my work all over the place.
That sounds like a really valuable resource, just having like some people you trust like pop in on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, those like people are like, "Oh, wow," or like, I mean, the fun thing is when people are like, "When did you have time to make all that?" And then you just feel like we're really good about yourself.
Okay, so my final question is like if you'd have any advice for your younger self at like 22 or like up to 3 years ago.
Well, I think that when I have like my more regretful moments, sometimes I wish that I'd been a little bit more open as a younger artist to just anything. And sometimes it took me a long time to learn certain things.
Open to like what are some of those things?
I think just like maybe influence or what was happening or not sort of like prejudging like the various like other art things that were happening around me. Like I think it took me a good amount of time to like become totally open to all the pluralistic art in the world and like let it all kind of pour into me. And, probably like insecurity and arrogance in my 20s led me to resist certain things or maybe like not understanding things made me keep them at arm's length.
And you think
Uh,
that like constrained your practice and your internal practice and outer practice?
no, because I also think that I just sort of like figured out, I've unlearned everything around the same period and just tried to figure out how to make art. But, I just think in general, like openness is the best policy because like, what do you really know? And I think that's just like an amazing way to live life. And I would have wished my younger self would have done even more of it.
And so how are you living that way now?
Oh, I think I just, I love like all art and I mean I curate shows that are like so unlike what I make. I'm friends with tons of artists who just make some things that are so unlike what I make and I just like think we live in a like an incredibly and increasingly hostile and conservative world and like art being one of those few models that we have for open living. It's like just like allow more of that into your life versus less.
Agree. I want to thank you for doing this. This is like this is part of my practice and having community, and I really appreciate you taking time coming over here. We're
Thanks,
in the
Mark.
same studio behind a little wall, trying to keep our audio separate, but we're actually in the same room. Okay, well, anyway, Dave, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mariah.